Hi, my name is Justin Miller, and today's video I'm going to talk about how to create vector textures using just your phone, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe Photoshop. So my work has a very tactile, hand-done feel. This is kind of largely attributed to the textures I've created and gathered throughout the years. Being able to create your own vector textures is not only helpful for the seasoned designer, but also the beginner as well. This is for anyone that wants to add a little extra spice to their textures and help it stand out amongst a sea of all of the same textures you see pop up around the internet. All you'll need to do in order to create your vector texture is have a cell phone. It doesn't need to be very fancy. I've got an iPhone 7, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe Photoshop. So I'll show you how to gather and take your photos, how to best optimize them in Photoshop, vectorizing them in Illustrator, and lastly, a simple application to show maybe how you can use your newly created vector texture. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. My channel is still super new and kind of encourages me to keep creating new content and new videos. So when I'm going out and taking photographs, I usually like to think about the contrast of the item, an interesting texture, a pattern, maybe dust, scratches, dirt, rust, anything that might be able to turn into a vector texture and be of use for a future project. You can really take advantage of moving around and getting different shots with the same subject. With this one boxcar, I was able to get 30 or 40 photographs just by moving around, getting closer and further back. And the little bits of ghost type that was on the boxcar really led for interesting compositions. So you can really get a lot of different photographs all from the same thing, just by moving around, getting different shots, whether it be close or further away, or just moving around. And the shots can totally change just by taking a step to the left or a step to the right. And you can really build a decent sized library just from a few subjects. First thing we're going to do is jump into Photoshop. So gather all the images you took with your cell phone. As you can see, we can get quite a few photos from just one location. I'm just going to select one at random here. We'll do this one, and we'll open with Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CC 2019. Any of the previous Photoshops will work just fine for this project. There aren't too many steps in Photoshop here. We're going to do just a few things to best optimize for Illustrator in the next video. First, we're going to go down to the adjustment layer and select threshold. And all we're really doing is playing with this levels. You can adjust it lower. This is taking away some of the shadows. This is adding a few of the shadows back, but it's just separating it into two colors that we can later convert into a vector texture in Illustrator. I think I like it right about there. Next, you want to save a new layer with all the adjustments you just made, which is just the one threshold adjustment. And to do that, a simple shortcut would be Command-Alt-Shift-E. That is just a non-destructive way to create a new layer with the adjustments you've made. Now, if you're happy with your image, save the JPEG into a file of your choosing. And you want to maximize the file size for the best quality in the end. Hit OK. Go ahead and open the edited photo in Illustrator. And if you notice, when you open the image in Illustrator, the art box is significantly smaller. So just go ahead. A little trick that I found, if you click the artboard tool here and then click your artwork just on a corner, it'll create a new artboard, the exact dimensions of the image there. And you can just go ahead and click your first artboard and go ahead and get rid of that. And then just click the direct select tool. There are a few steps to turn this into a vector texture. What we're going to do first is go to Image Trace at the top left corner. And this will take a little while because there's a lot of information that it has to process. All right, so I did a quick pass through. We want to go in and adjust this a little bit further. So at the top left, there is a Image Trace panel. Go ahead and go into that. Open up Advanced. Go ahead and turn off Preview. It'll try to render each time we make an adjustment, and it'll end up taking a lot longer. So we'll go ahead and make all of our adjustments to start with, and then we'll hit Trace at the end. So what I found to deliver the best settings with the retaining most of the details here, leave the threshold at 128 right in the middle. Since we kind of set that threshold up in Photoshop, we don't really need to do that any further. In paths, go ahead and set that to 100%. Corners, 100%. Noise, 1. You want to turn off snap curves to lines, and you want to turn on ignore white. At this point, you can go ahead and hit preview so you can get an idea of what your texture is going to look like. And it may take a little while because that's a lot of information to process. So now let's process the image. Go ahead and go up to expand at the top left. And now you have a vector texture. What is black is black. What is white is now gone. So at this point, you can do a lot of different things with your texture. You can change the color. You can change the scale. You can make it as big as you want. You can make it as small as you want. It'll retain that same detail. So if you want to save your file for future use, go to File, Save As. And I just usually save as an EPS, and then use artboards. And save in the location that best works for you. Go ahead and open Illustrator and type out a word, phrase, or anything that you think would really pertain to the series of textures that you've gathered. I put together just a short inspirational quote. So the first step is to go into your texture library and pick a texture you think would look interesting applied to your typography. I'm going to go with this one here and just drag it and drop it into Illustrator. As you can see, our texture is quite a bit larger than our artboard, so go ahead and scale it down. Grab a corner and hold Shift and scale it down to the appropriate size. That looks about right there. So to begin this process, go ahead and select your texture and hit Command-C, or go up to the top here and hit Edit, Copy. And we'll just copy that to the clipboard for now. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller there to better fit the typography. Go ahead and copy that again. All right, so we're going to be using a transparency mask. So go ahead and select your word or quote and go to the transparency tool here and hit Make Mask. And what you want to do is select the mask portion. So right now you can't see anything. Go ahead and hit Command V and position it over your typography. So we want to uncheck clip. And now our texture is applied to our typography. So if you hover over your type, you can see a blue bounding box here. And we can take and position and move this around as much as we'd like. You can also scale the texture up and down. So I'm going to kind of push it into a place that I think works best. That looks decent there. And go ahead and click out of the bounding box. And to exit the mask here, go ahead and click your artwork. So right now, that texture is knocked out of our typography. So if we take and look at this, we can see that anything that was texture is now gone from our type. You can always go back in and edit your texture by selecting the type, going back to the mask, and you can go in and make any fine adjustments, scale it, change it, do anything that you would like to do there. And whenever you want to exit or complete the effect there, just go ahead and click the left image to stop editing the opacity mask, and it'll accept those changes. This is just one of many practical uses you can use your newly created textures. The nice thing about this being editable, I can still grab this. This is still a vector image. This is just outlined typography. So I can select this and I can actually go in and change the colors or do kind of whatever I would like to do as far as customization. So this is just one of several applications that you can use your newly created texture. You can apply it to illustrations. You can use it for some subtle texturing on maybe an event poster. There's really a lot of opportunities you can use these textures, and so you can go out and take pictures knowing exactly how you can format the texture and maybe some practical uses. So you can keep that in mind as you're continuing to build your texture library. So the world is now your texture oyster. You'll never look at a piece of rust or a dirt smudge the same. So hopefully you can take this newfound skill and use it in your work, whether it be creating original work or maybe just saving a little bit of money on a texture that you would usually buy from a stock website. If you found this video useful at all, feel free to like, subscribe, do all the things. I plan on putting out videos once a week, publishing on Fridays, at least for the first year or so. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. If you happen to create any vector textures using this method, feel free to tag me on Instagram at justinmiller.design. I look forward to seeing what you create. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.